Hello, welcome back. It's Mr. Cho, and today we're going to go through the last book of the NT syllabus, which is chapter 9 to chapter 12. Okay, so do go and revise your previous two chapters, your previous two books, and yeah, I think you're going to be well prepared for your N level if you do your proper revision. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so the chapter 9 is about digestion. It's all about your digestive system. And there are a few things we have to learn. Okay, so firstly, we need to explain why digestion is necessary for most food in order for our body to use the food for energy, growth, and repair. Okay, so what does this mean? It's actually quite simple. Why is digestion necessary? It's because food, right? Let's look at a picture here. Food is a very big molecule, right? So let's look at this. So things like starch, right, things like protein, these are all very big molecules. They're not able to enter into our body. So actually when you're eating, right, there's a tube, right, from your mouth all the way down to your anus. That's just a long tube. The food actually didn't go into your body yet, right? It's just going through the tube. But how does it actually enter into your blood, which is then your body, right? Actually, the food has been digested by enzymes. So you see these red dots, right? These are the enzymes. Enzymes are able to break down large food molecules into smaller food molecules. And these small food molecules can then enter into the walls of the intestine, right? Specifically the small intestine. So why must we digest food? Because we need to get the food to be small enough so that it can be absorbed through the walls of the intestine. If you don't have enough enzymes and you don't digest your food well, then everything will just come out as feces. Okay, so that's why you must digest food. Okay, so after your food has been digested, then it can be sent into the cells to be used for energy. So for example, if you are walking around, you're moving, right? So my hands are moving. All these things require energy, right? Even the simple act of staying alive, right? Just living, breathing, all these things require energy. To open and close, right, my mouth, to breathe in air, right, for my lungs to expand, all these actually are muscles in my body that are moving. Okay, growth. Growth means that your cells are multiplying, from a baby, right? You're only maybe a few kg, and now you are a young man or young woman already, and your body is so much bigger because of the cells are growing. And repair, of course, right? So your skin, right? Your skin is shedding, right? Every day you got some skin that shed off, but your skin is still good, right? Still healthy and all that. It's because your body can repair your skin, right? And same for your other body parts also. Like if you broke a bone, right, your bone can still be repaired and you can be healed. Okay, so we need to identify the main organs and the associated organs of the digestive system. Okay, so when I say main organs, these are your mouth, your gullet, your stomach, your small intestine, your large intestine, your rectum, your anus, and then what are the associated organs? These will be the last four. The associated organs are your salivary glands, your pancreas, your gallbladder, and your liver. Okay, so these organs, right, are all working together to help us to do digestion. Right, if any one of them is damaged or missing, right, then it'll be very hard for us to digestion. So let's take a look at a picture over here of a digestive system. Okay, so we all know mouth lah, this one everybody knows. Okay, let's imagine, right, now Mr. Cho is having his breakfast, okay, and I eat three things, right? Keep it very simple. I'm going to eat just bread, right? Bread is starch, right? So bread is just made out of starch, right? Starch is a form of carbohydrate. Okay, and then the second thing I eat, let's say I become very stupid, I just eat protein powder, right? Because it's something simple, right? Protein powder, right? So what's protein powder contain? It contains protein, or simple as that. Okay, and lastly, very hungry, so I go eat a block of butter. What is butter? Butter is fats. Okay, so let's describe what will happen to these three objects, right? The bread, the or the starch, the proteins, and then the fats as it moves through our body. Okay, so firstly, what happens in the mouth? In the mouth, you just chew, right? You chew, you have to break up all these food into smaller substances, right? So you just break it into smaller pieces. But what is the enzyme in the mouth? There's only one enzyme, and this is what we call as the enzyme that can digest starch. Okay, it's actually called amylase enzyme, but never mind. You just know that the mouth enzyme, it can digest starch. So in your mouth, right, if you actually chew your bread for quite some time, you actually realize that your bread is not just becoming smaller in the sense that you're chewing it to become smaller, right? But your bread is actually being chemically changed also by the enzymes, and you turn it into something like a simpler sugar. So actually you start to taste, if you eat bread or biscuit, the bread can actually taste slightly sweeter, slightly only, right? That over a period of time. Okay, and where does the saliva come from? The saliva comes from our salivary glands. These are small little glands that are like at the back of our, near to the ear area, right? So these are where the saliva is being produced from, okay? And inside the saliva there are enzymes. Okay, then the food, right, will be turned into like a paste, like a mushy thing, like a ball, and this ball will then go down your esophagus, which another easier way of saying esophagus, of course, would be your gullet, right? Gullet, G-U-L-E-T. So in the gullet is being, you'll be just going down. Actually, your gullet is able to contract and push it downwards. So it's like a bit like a wave, right? It's a wave that's going down. Okay, and then it'll go down into the stomach. Now, be very careful. Some people tend to mix up their liver and their stomach. Right, the liver is this, how to say, this triangular shape, I would say. Okay, you know, like triangular shape thing, whereas this stomach is like a C shape, right? Like a reverse C shape. Okay, so what's happening in our stomach? In our stomach, there's only one enzyme, right? It can only digest specifically protein. So remember Mr. Cho ate protein powder, right? Okay, so what's going to happen to protein powder? The protein is actually quite a big molecule, right? It's like a very big thing. What happens is that in the stomach, you got a few things happening. Firstly, there's the enzyme that will digest proteins. So it's going to break apart all these protein, right, into simple things called amino acids, right? And these are the things that can then be absorbed into our body. Okay, but besides the enzymes that's in our stomach, there's a few other things that happen in our stomach. Firstly, the stomach is churning, right? Churning means that it's like moving, right? You can feel your stomach churning, right, when you're hungry, like that kind of feeling. So that feeling, or when your stomach is moving, it's called churning. It helps to move the food around, and it helps to break the food up into smaller pieces also. And lastly, the stomach contains a lot of hydrochloric acid, right? Acid, as we know, has a pH below 7. To be very specific, the pH of this stomach, of our stomach, is pH 2. Okay, pH 2. So this low pH, right, is not just for fun. It actually helps to kill the bacteria that may be found in our food. Because you know, you drop your food on the floor, or maybe you eat your hands, there's a lot of bacteria everywhere, right? So when the bacteria enters into the stomach, it's actually destroyed. Most of it is destroyed by the acid in our stomach. Of course, some bacteria are able to survive. You know, like for example, those that cause diarrhea or flu, this kind of like stomach flu kind of thing, right? Is actually the bacteria are actually resistant to the acid that's found in our stomach. But most bacteria will be destroyed. Okay, so that's what happened to the protein that's happening inside the stomach. Okay, now let's talk about the 3 accessory organs, right? These 3 organs are not in the path of the food. That means the food doesn't go into them, but they help out in digestion. We have the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas. Okay, so this pancreas, again, it's a bit small. It's like a little worm. It's like a big, actually not little, a big worm is found behind your stomach. Okay, so what is the function of these 3 things? Let's talk about the liver first. The liver produces bile. Okay, the liver actually has many functions, right? It has many. It's very important for our body. But one of the key function for digestion is that it produces bile. Okay, so what is bile? Bile is this like yellow, greenish liquid, right? This green kind of like liquid is a bit similar to detergent, right? If you go to your washing machine, and you see the detergent, it's a bit similar, right, to bile. Okay, sorry, I need to blow my nose. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. So, as I was saying, the bile will actually emulsify the large fat droplets into smaller fat droplets. Now, how does it work? Is that? So this is a fat droplet, right? Imagine you eat butter. Butter is made from fats. So this is a very big fat droplet. Your enzymes find it very difficult to actually attack or to digest this fat. So what will happen is that the bile, which is this green molecule, right, will come along and actually will emulsify, right? See the word here, emulsification. It will emulsify the large fat droplet into smaller fat droplets. It didn't actually change the fat droplets. Do you know? This is actually the same fat droplets as this, right? It didn't get chemically digested. So it's actually the same. If you leave these fat droplets here for a long period of time, over a period of time they would combine back together, and then they become back to this, right? So it's just like from a big drop, like become smaller drops, right? Smaller drops. Okay, then why does it do this? It's because then now the enzymes, right? The lipase enzyme, right, will come along, see the cursor, right? And then you will start to break down all these small fat droplets into the substances that can then be absorbed in our body. We call that as the fatty acids. Alright, so that is the function of bile. Bile is produced by what organ? That's right, it's the liver. But actually, the bile is produced in the liver, but it's stored in the gallbladder, right? Because you see your liver is doing a lot of things, right? Yeah? It cannot have a space for it to store. And you can't just say that, oh, food is coming, instantly make me 100 ml of bile. Cannot, ma. It takes time for it to store up and then load up. When the food comes, then it can release. Okay, so the bile is stored in the gallbladder. Please be careful of the word gallbladder, not bile bladder. A lot of people tend to get confused by this word, right? It's actually stored in the gall. Why is it called gall? I actually not very sure why. This is just a name, it's called gallbladder. Okay, so anyway, this bile, when it's stored in the gallbladder, will then be sent out through a certain duct, right? A duct is like a pipe into the small intestine over here. Right, so it'll be somewhere over here. And that is where it will perform its function, right? Its function is called emulsification. Okay, so that's the function of the liver, that's the function of the gallbladder. Now let's talk about the function of the pancreas. So the pancreas is a very helpful organ, right? Because it actually produces 3 enzymes, right? Basically, the 3 enzymes are for all the different food categories, right? Remember, we're talking about carbohydrates, which is the starch that Mr. Cho ate, the bread, then the protein powder, and then the butter, which is the fats, right? So actually, your pancreas produces 3 enzymes. You can just digest all these 3 things. Okay, and it's also helped by the small intestine itself. So the pancreas will produce pancreatic juice that contains enzymes, the 3 enzymes that I said. The small intestine also produces the intestine juice that has the 3 enzymes. So basically, your small intestine is very, very powerful, right? It's the most important organ for digestion. Why? Because it can produce all the enzymes that will cover all 3 of the nutrient groups, right? Whether it's carbohydrate, whether it's protein, or whether it's oil or fats, sorry. Okay, then you must say, but I thought my carbo is already digested in the mouth and my protein is digested in the stomach. Not all lah, right? How long you spend the food? How long does the food spend in your mouth? How long does the food spend in your stomach? Not very long, right? Mouth maybe 10 seconds, you chew and then swallow already. And then for stomach, you digest, maybe it takes about 3 to 4 hours in your stomach, and then it moves on into your small intestine. So actually the digestion is not finished, it's not complete. So maybe like let's say you got 100 grams of the protein in your stomach, right? Only about maybe 50 grams or 60 grams of the protein actually is digested in the stomach. The remaining, right, whatever is left that is not digested yet has to be digested in the small intestine. Okay, so the small intestine is where all of this digestion will be finished, like completely finished. Okay, after it's finished, it's now broken down into very small, simple molecules. As you remember, we saw in the picture, right? The picture just now. Okay, I cannot find it. Okay, and then all these small molecules, they can then enter into your bloodstream through the wall of the small intestine, and that is what we call as absorption. So the small intestine got 2 functions. Firstly, it completely digests all the nutrients, and secondly, it will absorb all the nutrients into your body. Okay, so if you don't have a small intestine, then you're dead lah, right? Because you can't absorb any nutrients, and you need the nutrients, right, for your energy and for your growth. Okay, then all the other undigested things, right? For example, the fiber. Our body cannot digest fibers, right? Which is found in the fruits and vegetables. So these fibers and some of the excess water will then enter into this large intestine over here. Okay, and large intestine function is quite simple, right? Just to help to absorb any excessive water and also help to absorb some of the minerals, right? For example, and minerals and vitamins. So minerals would be things like iron, things like calcium. Then vitamins will be things like vitamin C, vitamin D. Okay, sorry, I need to blow my nose again. I'm a little bit sick today. Okay, so now that all the nutrients have been absorbed, the undigested food, right, move through the large intestine, then finally it's stored in the rectum. Now we call it as feces, right? Because this feces is just all the undigested stuff. It's stored in the rectum, and then finally it passed out from the anus. And that's it, right? That's your whole digestive system, right? Long story, right? What's important here is that you know where the different nutrients are being digested. So we know that starch is digested in the mouth, and also it can be digested in the small intestine. Proteins can be digested in the stomach, and it can also be digested in the small intestine. Fats is only digested in the small intestine by itself. Okay, and that's about it. All right, so let's go back to the document. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the enzymes, and this term called optimum temperature and pH. So firstly, what is an enzyme? An enzyme is a substance, right, that will help to speed up, right, not slow down, it will speed up the rate of digestion. And these enzymes, they require an optimum temperature and an optimum pH to work efficiently. Okay, so let's look at a picture over here. Okay, let's talk about temperature first. Okay, so most enzymes in our body, right? Okay, this one is just a example lah. Most enzymes in our body, actually, they have an optimum temperature of our body temperature, which is perfect, right? Do you know what's your body temperature? That's right, it's around 37 degrees. Okay, so that means that your enzymes are working best near to 37, right? Maybe 38, 39 is still okay, 40 is still okay. As it gets too hot, right? For example, if you put it into boiling water, right? Or if it's overheated, right? Then the enzymes will actually become denatured. What do I mean by denatured? It means that the enzymes, let's say that this is the shape of the enzyme, right? It's like this, like a certain shape. It's a certain shape. But when it gets denatured, you'll like, and then you'll just become like nothing lah, right? It's just like a weird shape already, and then it's a useless thing, right? It can no longer perform its function of digestion. So if it's too hot for the enzyme, it will become denatured. What happens to the enzyme when it's very cold? Okay, so this is the enzyme, right? Like a C shape. If it's very, very cold, right, it's just frozen, right? It cannot move. It's not able to move around. Normally enzymes will be moving around, and then they'll do their digestion. But this enzyme, when it's too cold, is what it calls inactive. Okay, so you must be very careful to use the right terms. Enzymes are inactive when it's cold, and enzymes are denatured when it's very, very hot. What about the perfect temperature, the optimal temperature? Then the enzyme is very active, right? Very efficient. It's most efficient at the optimum temperature. That's what we just said, right? Enzymes are most efficient at the optimum temperature. Now the similar story happens for pH. Now for pH is a bit different from temperature, actually, but the terms we use are the same. So we know that the enzyme will work most efficiently at its optimum pH, right? pH is a measure of whether something is acidic, alkaline, or neutral. So in this case, we have a certain enzyme, right? Let's say it has an optimum pH of 8. Okay, most likely this is linked to your small intestine already. Okay, so what happens at the high pH? Actually, the enzyme is denatured, right? Same reason, right? Because this is your enzyme. When the pH is too high, right, there's a lot of like high pH, a lot of acid around, there's a lot of alkaline around it, right? Then the enzyme will, and then it'll become denatured. Okay, now same enzyme. What will happen if I put it into a very strong acid, too acidic for it? Okay, do you think it will become inactive? No, it actually doesn't become inactive, because inactive only is about cold, right? When it's very, very cold, then it stops moving, right? But if it's in a very acidic environment, okay, then what happens to the enzyme is also same thing. It will also be denatured. Okay, and then that's what happens with it. Okay, then of course at the optimum pH, it is going to be most effective, right? You can see here, this is called the enzyme activity. The higher the enzyme activity, the more efficient and more effective your enzymes will be. Okay, now let's look at the 3 different enzymes that are found in our body. Okay, we know that there are three main groups of enzymes, right? Some of the enzymes, they work best in a pH environment of 2, right? pH 2. Which part of our body is pH 2? That's right, okay, it's the stomach. So these enzymes, they mainly work in your stomach and they digest proteins, right? Okay, the names are just some other language name, okay? So These are the enzymes that digest proteins in your stomach. Then, which part of your body is pH 7? Okay, that's right, it's your mouth, right? Because you know that your saliva actually is near to pH 7. Some people, because they never brush teeth or blah blah blah, then their mouth is a bit less than 7, so maybe about 6.5 or 6. The acidity of their mouth is a bit higher because of the acids produced by the bacteria on their teeth. But most people, right, their mouth should be around 7. Okay, so these are the enzymes that will digest starch. Okay, that is found in your saliva. Okay, then lastly, we got some enzymes that are found in your small intestine. Okay, your small intestine has a pH of 8, which is slightly alkaline, right? It's above 7, so it's alkaline. Why does it have to be alkaline? Remember that you just had all these substances, right, coming in from your stomach. So that's all the acid from the stomach also flowing down into the small intestine. If you don't neutralize the acids that are from the stomach, because if you don't neutralize it, then it will actually damage the small intestine. So the small intestine naturally has an alkaline environment to neutralize the acids that come from the stomach. Okay, so we have already talked about C and D, which now we understand that digestive enzymes are important to speed up rate of digestion. They require optimal temperature and pH to work efficiently. And then we also know how to interpret the data of the effect of pH and temperature on the rate of protein digestion by enzymes. Okay. Lastly, okay, now we can, oops, this is wrong. Sorry, this is typo over there. Okay, now we will talk about excessive alcohol consumption on the liver. Okay, so back to our liver. Okay, we know our liver has a few jobs, right? Firstly, it produces bile, but secondly, it also helps to remove alcohol from our blood. You know, you drink alcohol, that glue, right? Where does alcohol go? It actually doesn't count for your pee, right? You drink water, you pee out water. But where you drink alcohol, where does the alcohol go? It actually will be detoxified in your liver. So your liver is doing a lot of work, right? It's actually taking the alcohol and removing the toxins from it. Because you know that actually alcohol is actually toxic, right? You drink too much alcohol, you can die. Okay, but the problem is that if you drink too much alcohol, excessive amounts of it, like every day you drink 3 bottles, 2 bottles, right? Over a long period of time, your liver is working too hard already. It's fighting off all these toxins every single day. You get what I call a damaged liver. Okay, let me show you a picture of it. Right, this is called liver cirrhosis. Right, a damaged liver means that the liver becomes very hard, right? Very hard and very scarred. So it looks like that lah. Okay, at first you got healthy liver, then after a while it turns got spots lah, it got scars lah. It looks very disgusting. Okay, it's very hard, right? It's not able to perform its function anymore. Okay, that's the first problem that can be happening, right? Liver cirrhosis or damaged liver. The second problem is that if you drink too much alcohol, excessive amounts, then you can get what I call as liver cancer. So liver cancer, as you can see here, is when there are a growth of cancer cells in the liver. And these cancer cells, right, where do they come from? Actually, they are the liver cells themselves, but they mutate, right? They turn crazy, and then they start to grow like mad, right? And these are what I call as cancer. Cancer is very dangerous because it can spread, not just from our liver, right? See all these bumps, these lumps is staying in the liver, but after some time it actually moves around. From the liver, it can go to your stomach. From your stomach, it can go to your lungs. It just moves around your whole body, right? And that's why they do this thing called chemotherapy to pump the chemicals in your body to try and kill the cells, right? But it's very, very painful, right? And it's very, very damaging to your body also. Okay, so don't drink too much alcohol, right? Everything you do in moderation, right? Whether whatever you do in life, just do it in moderation. Okay, I need to pause a while. Okay, now let's talk about constipation, right? Constipation is basically when your feces is too hard. Okay, so let's look at the term poop. Okay, let's see. Okay, so normally your feces is like middle, like number 3, right? Number 5 is diarrhea, then number 1 is constipation, right? Constipation, or even number 2 is constipation. That means that there's not enough water and not enough fibers that are found inside the feces. Okay, and so it'll be very, very hard, very difficult to pass motion also, because your body is like rocks like that, right? So constipation, right, simple. How to prevent? Right, we need to eat more fibers that comes from the fruit and vegetables, and drink more water. Okay, if you eat a lot of fiber but don't drink enough water, also can be constipated. Okay, so you must do both. Okay, diabetes. Okay, so what is diabetes? Diabetes is a high level of blood sugar in your body. That means that you've been eating so much sweet food and sweet drinks, all these, right? Your body actually then becomes unable to produce to how to say to use the insulin properly. There's something wrong with the insulin in your body. Okay, insulin is actually this hormone that is produced by your pancreas. It actually helps your body to control your blood sugar or blood glucose level. Okay, so if the person has very poor diet that's high in sugars, right, over a long period of time, the body becomes insensitive to the effect of insulin, right, that hormone. And so the person becomes a diabetic person, right, a diabetes, right? He got the disease called diabetes. Okay, so how does that affect him? Firstly, he's not able to control his blood glucose level. Okay, so what can we do to avoid this diabetes? Firstly, we need to have a good diet. Avoid taking in sugary drinks, right? Really limit, right? Don't drink so much bubble tea, at most once a week. Okay, bubble tea once a week. Sugary drinks like sweet drinks, all this once a day, right? Then the other times just drink water. Water is so nice, honestly. Water is so good. Okay, and then you also should exercise, right? Because when you exercise, you're using up the blood sugar in your body. Okay, and so when you exercise, you are more fit, you're more healthy, you are more able to control your blood glucose level. Okay, so of course, how will a diabetic person monitor his blood level? Will be using this device. Okay, they put it on their finger, right? Where actually they take a small little bit of blood from the finger and actually read how much is the blood glucose level in the person. If it's too high, right, they need to actually take a insulin jab. So they will actually have to take this device jab in their body. It's an insulin. It's insulin inside that liquid. So it helps to control the blood glucose in their body. Okay, now we have finished one chapter. Let's move on to the chapter on breathing. Okay, breathing. So breathing, just like digestion, is one of the key things in life, right? You must eat and you must breathe. These are the few things we must do. Okay, so why is oxygen important to us? Okay, firstly, oxygen will break down the food molecules in order to release the energy that's trapped in them. Okay, so this is a little bit like chemistry thing lah. Okay, imagine this is your food molecule, right? This is a food molecule. Okay, rather this is the food molecule. Okay, just this lump over here. Okay, what happens is that your body, you can't just break it down, right? Once this food molecule is entered into your body already, right? It's been digested, it's been absorbed into your cells. So it can't just be open up so simply, right? It can't open up. There's a lot of energy there's a lot of energy inside. Okay, but what your body needs to do, it actually has to take some oxygen. Okay, so this O stands for oxygen, right? It combine it together. Then during this combination, poof, right? It will cause the energy to be released from the food that's trapped inside the food molecules. Okay, so all this energy, then your body can start to use the energy to do things. Okay, so this is why oxygen is so important. It actually helps to break down the food molecules and release the energy that's trapped inside of them. Okay, next we talk about why breathing is important. Okay, obviously breathing is important because you need to take in oxygen, right, from the atmospheric air around us and get it into our lungs, and we also need to breathe out carbon dioxide. Now we know that I'll get to that later. Let's talk about the different parts of the respiratory system first. Okay, respiratory system. Okay, so let's find a simple one. Okay, over here. Okay, so let's just focus on the key thing. Okay, so firstly, we got our mouth and our nostrils. Our nostrils have hair. They help to trap all the dust and all the bacteria which you're breathing in. So it's actually better to breathe in through your nostrils rather than through your mouth. But if you have to breathe through your mouth, then of course just do it lah. Right. So the air will be taken in through the windpipe. Okay, in some textbooks they call it as the trachea, but it's okay, we can just call it as the windpipe. Okay, so this is the windpipe. Then it will split. The windpipe will actually split into two, which is then called your bronchus. Right, your bronchus over here. So there's the two big bronchus. These bronchus will then split into bronchioles. Okay, so how I remember is basically the short one, right? Bronchus is shorter than the bronchioles, right? So you split, yeah, you got more things, right? You split got more things. So it's like from the shorter one, then turn into the longer one, right? Bronchioles, right? So more things. Okay, so these bronchioles are this very like a network over here. It's a bit like the tree roots, you know, like you look at the tree roots, right? It's very much like that. Okay, and at the end of the bronchioles, this picture doesn't show it. Let's see if I can find a better picture. I want to see the alveoli over here. Okay, at the end of the bronchioles are these small little things that look like grapes. Okay, these are what you call as the alveoli. Okay, or simple word, call them the air sac. Right, this is where the oxygen. So the oxygen will actually move in through the windpipe, go through the bronchus, into the bronchioles, right, all the way to the end where it enters into the air sacs over here. Right, these are small little red dots over here. Okay, so that is how the different thing. Okay, so what are the functions of this thing? Firstly, windpipe, it carries the air from the atmospheric air into our body, into our lungs. Okay, so it carries air into our lungs. That's a simple job, right? Very simple. And also it helps to expel the air, the carbon dioxide out of our lungs. The bronchi, what's the function of the bronchi? It simply it connects, right, your windpipe to the bronchioles and then the air sacs. Okay, that's the function of the bronchi. Then what's the function of the lungs? The lungs, right, as we all know, right, is your take in the oxygen, right? Take in oxygen and then you will exhale out carbon dioxide. Now let's focus on these two though. These two are quite important. Okay, these two, rib cage and diaphragm, right, they are actually muscles. Okay, so just like these muscles in your hand, right? Muscles, they actually can move. Of course, the rib cage is not just a muscle. The rib cage is also bone. It's a bone and muscle. Okay, so let's see how it works over here. Okay, let's see. Let's talk about diaphragm first. You see the diaphragm. Diaphragm is a bit like N shape, right? N shape. So when the diaphragm, when it's contracting, it will actually go downwards, right? It goes downwards. And you imagine that if you pull this diaphragm down, you got more space for your lungs, right? And so your lungs will expand. And when it expands, then the oxygen can then enter into the expanded lungs. Okay, so that's the function of the diaphragm. Then after that, when it goes up again, it relaxes, it will curve upwards. As it curves upwards, then there's less space, right? Your lungs have less space, so they will compress. And then as you compress, then the oxygen also, not oxygen, the air will actually move out of the windpipe. Okay, so that's the function of the diaphragm. It would contract and relax, right, to allow air to enter into the lungs. Okay, then what about the rib cage? Okay, the rib cage also has an important function. Let's see if I can find a picture of the rib cage. Okay, so this is the rib cage. Yeah, so rib cage also quite simple Okay, you can see that your lungs are inside. Imagine these are where your lungs are. When you're breathing in, your rib cage will expand. Right, the more space it expands, the more oxygen can enter into your body. Okay, and then when you breathe out, right, your rib cage will shrink, and then the air will be exhaled out from your body, from your mouth. Okay, so rib cage also has the function of expanding and contracting to allow air to enter and exit out of your respiratory system. Okay, sorry, voice is very bad. I'm a little bit sick. Okay, so let's now talk about choking. Okay, so recently I saw a very cool picture of choking. Okay, choking peanuts. Okay, so this is a real picture. Okay, actually this is a picture of a small child who died of suffocation. Okay, so here is the lungs of a child, and I can see the windpipe. Right, you can see the bronchus. You can see the bronchioles. You can't really see the air sacs because those are very, very tiny. Okay, so what happened was that the child is eating. Normally, the food should go down into your gullet. However, if you do not eat carefully, right, actually it can accidentally go into your windpipe. Okay, actually, there's a small flap on your windpipe that protects, that prevents food from going into your windpipe. But if you talk and you eat, right, you blah, blah, ha ha ha, laugh laugh laugh, then all this the flap will open and then the food can actually enter in your windpipe. So what happens when the food enters into your windpipe? Right, that's where it gets dangerous because the oxygen, right, it prevents air from entering into your lungs, right? This food will prevent air from entering into your lungs, and it also prevents air from exiting your lungs. So you are not able to inhale, you're not able to exhale. So how to describe this, right? The food particle will block the windpipe and prevent air from entering or exiting the lungs. Therefore, the person will not have enough oxygen, and then the person would suffocate to death. Okay, so we know that if there's no oxygen in your body, you suffocate to death. Okay, so this is why choking can lead to death, right? Through suffocation. Okay, what's the difference between inhaled air and exhaled air? Okay, this one we got three main things. Inhaled air versus exhaled air. Okay, there's three main things that we have to compare. Firstly, here. Okay, inhaled air. Inhaled air is the air that's in the surroundings around us. Right? We call this as the atmospheric air. Okay, there's 21% of oxygen. Okay, so it's quite high lah. In exhaled air, there's 16% oxygen. Okay, what's that mean? That means that when we breathe in, it's 21%. We use up about, you do the math, 21 minus 16, use up about 5% of this oxygen, and then we exhale out. Okay, so that's why it's 16. Okay, we don't use up all these 21% of the oxygen. We just use about 5-ish or so. Okay, then the carbon dioxide, okay, that's about 4%. So this carbon dioxide, right, we exhale it out. Right, so as when we inhale very little, 0.04, but exhale got a lot more. There's a lot more carbon dioxide in the exhaled air. Nitrogen is the same because our body doesn't use nitrogen, so it's exactly the same. 79, 79. Water vapor. Okay, this one is depending on whether you are in maybe if you are at the jungle, it's different from when you're in the desert. Okay, so if let's say in the jungle, there's a bit more water vapor in the air, but in the desert it's very dry. Okay, there's not much water vapor in the air. But let's say for most of the time, there's less water vapor in the air, in the inhaled air, and there's going to be more water vapor in the exhaled air. The word saturated means that there's more of it. Okay, why is that the case? Because our lungs, right, there's actually a thin layer of water in our lungs. And when we breathe out, this water vapor evaporates and it goes out in our exhaled air. So, you know, like you go to cold country, your hand, you can actually feel the water vapor in the exhaled air. Okay. Yeah, okay, so we know about this lime water test. Let's just do a quick revision. We can infer that exhaled air has higher concentration of carbon dioxide than inhaled air using the lime water test. Okay, so lime water test. Okay, so here is a person, right, and he's actually bubbling or blowing. There's a person that's blowing, right, he's exhaling air into the lime water. So we have tried this for ourselves, and we know that at first the lime water is clear like this. You can see the exhaled air, right? The person is bubbling out the exhaled air, and after a period of time, right, the lime water will turn cloudy or chalky white. Okay, and this proves that there's exhaled air. The exhaled air contains carbon dioxide. Okay, so something. Yeah, like this. Okay, like that you blow into the lime water, it turns chalky white. I don't know why there's normal water here, just to prove that there's nothing special. Okay, so water, of course, water remains as water lah, so there's nothing special there. Okay, then let's talk about cobalt chloride. Okay, so exhaled air has a higher concentration of water vapor than inhaled air using a cobalt chloride paper test. Okay, let's look at that. Cobalt chloride paper, spelled wrongly. Okay, so cobalt chloride is also quite a simple test. Here we can see that there's some water in this dropper, and the paper normally, right, is actually blue. It should be blue, but when it's exposed to water or water vapor, it will turn pinkish white. There you can see pinkish white. Okay, so that is how it works. Okay, so like that, yeah, you can turn it pinkish white, the water. Okay, so yeah. Okay, now we discuss the effects of smoking and passive smoking on the respiratory system. Okay, so very obvious, smoking contains a lot of harmful chemicals. For example, nicotine. Nicotine will get you addicted. Okay, will get you will start to have addiction, and you need to maintain that level of nicotine. Okay, then there's other substances like carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide would block your red blood cells from carrying oxygen, and then you feel very weak all the time. You can't run, you run a bit, you feel like panting because you have not enough oxygen in your body because your red blood cells have been blocked by the carbon monoxide. Lastly, you got a lot of irritants, right? A lot of ashes, all these kind of small little dirt particles, we call that irritants. Those will actually cause you to get bronchitis and also get lung cancer. Because there's also other substances like tar and all that kind of stuff that will cause you to get this kind of problem. So what is bronchitis, right? Let's take a quick look. Bronchitis. Okay, so what's bronchitis? Bronchitis is basically when your lungs are filled up with mucus. Okay, just like how my nose are filled with mucus now. Okay, normally your bronchus, right, is an airway, right? It should be empty, right? Just for air to go in and out. But when there's bronchitis, you got too much of this mucus, you feel like it's very hard to breathe. It's like something stuck in your lungs like that. Okay, so it's very bad. Okay, a lot of mucus there. You can see mucus in the lungs. That's called bronchitis. And then the other issue will be lung cancer. Of course, we know what cancer is already. Cancer is the growth of cells in the lungs. Okay, so something like this. Okay, so it's the lungs. Then there's a huge growth of cancer cells in the lungs. Okay, and of course, this will cause you to have breathing problems and all that. Okay, so avoid smoking, right? And not just smoking, it's actually passive smoking can also cause the same effects. So if you are near to a person who's smoking, right, you breathe in all these kind of toxins, right? For example, the carbon monoxide lah, the tar lah, the ashes lah, the irritants, the nicotine, right? You also get the harmful effect. Okay, and then you also can fall sick with bronchitis and lung cancer. So if someone is smoking near you, right, if you can walk away, walk away. If you're not able to walk away, like for example, you are trapped in that room or house or what, you should tell them that you do not want to get secondhand smoke, and please ask them to smoke further or far away from you. Okay, so I know that some of your, maybe like your parents smoke, what, just tell them lah, right, in a polite way that please don't give me this passive smoking, because this is all scientifically proven, right? It's all it really is happening. Okay, it's not like I tell you this one just for fun only. Okay, now let's move on to the second last chapter called fitness and cardiac health. Okay, now fitness is basically the ability to do physical activity, and health is being free from disease. So if I say that I'm very fit, that means I'm able to do a lot of things. I can run very fast, I can do a lot of push-ups, that kind of stuff. That's fitness. And health means being free from disease. So for example, right now I'll say that I'm quite fit because I can do a lot of push-ups. But right now I'm not feeling very healthy because I got a bit of a flu, I got a bit of running nose, that kind of thing. So I'm not feeling super healthy right now. Okay, what are the functions of blood? There are 4 parts of blood: red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and plasma. Okay, so let's talk about the functions here. Okay, so red blood cells will transport oxygen, as we all know. Okay, white blood cells will destroy bacteria and other foreign bodies. They also produce antibodies. What are antibodies? These are actually small little like homing missiles, right? These are small little they are actually proteins, small little proteins that would target the bacteria and other foreign bodies and destroy them. However, white blood cells also have a role in tissue rejection. That means that if you have to have a skin transfer, right? For example, I got a burn on my skin and I get skin from another person and put on my body, right? My white blood cells in my body will reject this skin, right? They don't like it because it's not from me. They reject it and they will actually attack that skin and destroy it. And this will cause a lot of complication. It can even cause me to die. Okay? So, what are platelets? Platelets are small little things, they're actually not cells, they're actually small little like, particles that will help you to do blood clotting. So when you got a cut, say, got someone slash you or what, you got the blood is flowing out, right? Very quickly, the platelets will gather and they will form a blood clot. The blood clot will actually trap more things like the red blood cells and other things, right? And then there will be a clot. Then after that, it turns into a scar, and then that's why it calls a blood clot, okay? Now lastly, we got plasma. Now plasma is just this yellowish liquid that's in our blood. Okay, actually most of our blood is plasma, right? 70% of it is plasma. So this is the liquid component of your blood. Okay, it's a yellow liquid. Some people get confused. Some people thought that the red blood cells carry the food. No. It is the plasma, the liquid, that is actually carrying the food substances. And the carbon dioxide, it also goes in the plasma. So the red blood cells, their only job, very simple job, to carry the oxygen. That's all. Okay, let's talk about the flow of the blood flow from the heart to the lungs and the arteries, veins, and capillaries. Okay, so let's search a picture. Arteries, veins, capillaries. Okay, let me pause and find a better picture. Okay, so let's outline the path of blood flow to the heart and then to the lungs. Let's talk about that first. Okay, so this is a picture of our circulatory system. Okay, our circulatory system consists of a few things. Firstly, your heart, and then the blood vessels. Your lungs are technically not a part of your circulatory system. They're actually part of your what you call as your respiratory system. Okay, that's breathing. Okay, so let's talk about circulatory system. We see that there's this thing called this part over here. This is your heart. Your heart, right? The part that is this area here. This is what I call as the veins, right? The veins carry blood back towards your heart. Okay, and then what about the arteries? The arteries carry the blood away from your heart. So you can see here, this artery, it carries blood away and then all to the rest of your body. This area is what I call as the capillaries. These are in your tissue. For example, the capillaries in your fingers, it's in your toes, even in your face, right? All this part, there's a lot of capillaries and arteries and all that stuff. Okay, so what happens, right? The blood is brought back by the veins back towards our heart. So the rule of veins always carry blood towards your heart. Okay, towards. Now you see this blood vessel over here is bringing the blood away from the heart towards the lungs. So is it a vein or is it artery? Some people get very confused because they say, oh, it's blue. Blue must be vein. Blue is always vein. No, that's false. Alright, that's a misconception. A lot of people make misconception. Right, this actually is what calls an artery, right? It's an artery over here, right? Because it's carrying the blood away from the heart and to the lungs. Okay, in the lungs, right? We breathe in oxygen, right? And oxygen goes into our blood. You can see it's starting to turn red already. Okay, and then what happens is that the carbon dioxide would be exhaled out from our lungs. Now we move on. We'll go over here. Okay, so this blood vessel is carrying the blood back towards your heart. I can see, follow this line towards your heart. So will you call it as an artery or call it as a vein? That's right. You should call it as a vein, because anything that carries blood towards your heart is a vein, as you can see here, vein. Doesn't matter red or blue. Don't look at the color, right? Just focus and think, right? Whether or not it's going towards your heart or away from the heart. Okay? So just to recap, veins, they carry blood towards your heart. So this is a vein, and this is also a vein. And then arteries, they carry blood away from your heart, right? This is the artery, and then this also is artery over here. Okay, so this part is just referring to your body right? Your skin your muscles, all these different body tissues. Okay, all right. Let's compare the artery, veins, and capillary. Now your artery, as you said, it carries the blood away from your heart, and the reason why it needs to be so thick, as you can see, look, the artery is actually quite a muscular thing, right? It actually has a thick layer of muscle. You see this like pinkish thing? This pinkish thing is your muscle, right? Why does it have to have such a thick layer of muscle? That's because the pressure, right? Imagine this is your heart, right? Every time it's compressing, right? It's pumping. There's a high amount of pressure that every time you pump, the blood will shoot, will move there's a high pressure of it. And if your arteries are not thick enough, then they'll just burst, right? And then you get explosion of blood in your body, right? Then you die lah. Okay, so that's why your arteries need to have a thick layer of muscle. Okay, this pink area. Okay, then we compare this to the vein. The vein has a thinner layer of muscle, but the vein got one advantage in that sense. The vein actually has a wider lumen space. A lumen is just a hole the hole that's in the blood vessel. Okay, so you see this the lumen. Compare this lumen with this one. Which one do you think is bigger? So you got here, it's like so long, right? It's so long and so big. Like the lumen, there's a lot of space in a vein as compared to artery. There's lesser space. Okay, so the advantage of the vein is that the vein actually has a larger lumen or more internal diameter. So this is the diameter, right? From this to this, right? The diameter is more than the diameter that's in the artery. Lastly, you got the capillary. The capillary are very tiny. Capillary is a very, very small little blood vessels, right? And these blood vessels are so tiny, right, that they are like found right at the ends of your fingertip, right? The ends of your ears, everything lah. Okay, so these are your capillaries. They're very small, right? And their main function is to connect the arteries to the veins. Let's see if I can find a picture of that. Okay, yeah, over here. Okay, so this is your artery, right? Then it's connected by your capillaries towards your vein. Okay, now there's one last thing I want to show you, which is this thing called valves. Okay, that's over here. Okay, so out of the three, right? Out of the three, which do you think has valves? Is it the artery, the vein, or the capillary that has valves? Okay, that's right. It is the veins that have valve. Okay, so if you look here, this is the vein. You got this thing called a valve. Valve is just like a opening and closing. It's a bit like a doorway. So you see that when the blood is trying to flow downwards, right? It cannot, right? It's not able to go downwards. But if the blood is flowing up, right, back towards the heart, then it can. So it's like a one-way door, right? Only it allows blood to flow in one direction, and this is called, it prevents a backflow of blood. Okay, the valve will prevent the backflow of blood. Okay, so there are other things. Okay, now we talk about cholesterol, and we talk about how cholesterol can cause stroke and heart attack. Now, cholesterol is not exactly the same as fats. It's a slightly different version of it. Okay, it's also found mainly found in fatty food right? Things like fried chicken fried this and that right? So cholesterol, it will actually restrict the blood flow in the arteries by forming plaques, and then it affects your fitness and your health. You can get stroke. Stroke is when there's a blockage in the blood vessels in your brain. Okay, so imagine there's some arteries, right, that's going to your brain. But if it's blocked, then there's no oxygen in your brain, then you get stroke. Okay, then heart attack, same thing, right? Your heart itself has a lot of arteries around it, and then if it's blocked, you get the heart does not have enough oxygen, then you get heart attack. Okay, so let's search cholesterol forming plaque. Now the spelling for plaque is a bit tricky, so please get this correct. P-L-A-Q-U-E, plaque. Okay, so let's see what's happening here. This is a good picture. Okay, so we see that this is your cholesterol, right? It's hardened already, right? It becomes plaque. This is your artery. So normally your artery is right, has enough space for your red blood cells to move. But when it becomes when there's plaque, right, it will block the passageway of the arteries, and then there's less oxygen, there's less blood, there's less nutrients, right, that's flowing to your heart. And so when your heart does not get enough oxygen and nutrients, you get a heart attack. The same story is for your brain. If your brain does not get enough oxygen and nutrients, you get a stroke. Okay, so how do we check the body's flow of blood? There are three main ways. By checking your pulse. So you can check your pulse by feeling your body. Your pulse is linked to your heartbeat. Every time your heart beats one time, you feel a pulse. Okay, so these two are quite linked. Pulse and heartbeat are quite interlinked. Then of course you can feel your pulse also here also, right, at your neck area. Okay, your heartbeat is just counting the number of times that your heart beats in 1 minute. Okay, this one you must know a little bit of math 1 minute 60 seconds, right? So if most of the time the nurse only counts to 30 seconds because she don't want to waste her time, she only counts to 30. So let's say if she counts to 30, your heartbeat, right? She puts her hand on your chest and you feel, then she feels like, oh, in 30 seconds you have 30 heartbeats. So in 1 minute, how many heartbeat? You just times 2 lor, right? 30 seconds times 2 to get 1 minute. Then you know that in 1 minute you got 60 heartbeats. Okay. Blood pressure is linked to your blood flow, but it's also affected by things like cholesterol. Okay, so things like when you got very high blood pressure, it means that there's the blood is moving around your body, but it's very high pressure because you got too much cholesterol, too much plaque in the body. So to reduce the blood pressure, you need to eat healthily, right? Avoid obesity and exercise. Okay, so yeah, we already said this. Pulse rate and heart rate, these two are interlinked. Every time your heart beats or contracts, you will feel a pulse. Okay, how to measure pulse rate? Okay, very simple. You just put your finger on your neck, or what you're putting it on your arteries. Okay, and then how to explain the exercise has an effect of pulse rate and breathing rate is very simple. Because when you exercise, you require more oxygen, right? And in order for your body to get more oxygen, you increase your breathing rate, you breathe in faster, right? And you also your heart starts to beat faster, and so your pulse will increase. Okay, because you need to carry more oxygen to the exercising muscles. Okay, data that shows correlation of heart disease and several factors. Okay, basically it's not very simple. You just say that, right? Why do people get heart disease? Firstly, they got very high blood pressure, right? The higher your blood pressure, the worse it is for you. Bad lifestyle habit, things like eating too much junk food, right? Eating convenience food, all these kind of unhealthy, eating too much salt, right? All these things will lead to heart diseases. Okay, so eating too much salt and saturated fats will lead to heart disease. Okay, we need to talk about the structure of a joint. Okay, and then some of the common problems related to the joint, such as sprains, dislocation, and arthritis. Okay, let's quickly talk about them. Structure of a joint. Okay, so let's talk about the joint. Okay, so first of all, there's a lot of other random things here. Don't worry. Okay, let's talk about the key terms. There are a few things that people get confused about. Firstly, they get confused about this thing called a tendon versus the ligament. What's the difference between tendon and ligament? As you can see, the tendon, it connects the muscle to the bone. Okay, so tendon is muscle to the bone. Now, how I like to remember that is I just imagine like I eat the chicken, then often they say, oh, chicken tendon very nice. So like usually chicken is made from a lot of muscle. There's like muscle in the chicken, right? Like, okay, I don't know, this doesn't make any sense, but yeah, I just really remember the chicken tendon is nice to eat, right? And then the chicken ligament not nice to eat, right? I eat ligament, I spit out. Tendon, like, oh, not bad, still can eat. Okay, so that's how I remember it. I remember that muscle it's connected by the tendon to the bone. Then the ligament, it connects the bone to the bone. Okay, so that's the difference. Okay, then we have the cartilage. The cartilage is a very hard and a flexible tissue that will actually protect your bones as they are rubbing against each other. So it reduces the friction that's in between your bones. But if the cartilage gets worn out, then that's where you get the problem of arthritis. Okay, so as you can see here, a healthy joint has a layer of cartilage. But when there's arthritis, right, the joints are the cartilage is worn off, and therefore the bones are rubbing against each other. Okay, imagine how painful that would be. Right, where does this usually happen? It happens in your joints, right? Your fingers, your feet, right? In your elbows and your knees, right? So these are where arthritis can happen. Okay, then sprains. Sprain is quite simple. Sprain is just when you overstretch your ligament. Okay, let's see. Yeah, over here. Okay, so sprain. Let's focus on sprain. Sprain is just about ligament. So you know that ligament connects your bone to your bone. If you overstretch your ligaments, there's a small little tear in the ligament. Right, this is what I call as a sprain. Okay, then what is a dislocation? Okay, dislocation also quite simple. Dislocation. Okay, so dislocation is simply when the bones, like some of your bones, like your shoulder bone, right, they're actually like, it's like, looks like a ball, right, and then it will pop out from the socket, right, the bone pop out of the socket, and then you get dislocation. Okay, so yeah, we already said fracture. Fracture is when there is a break in your bones. Okay, so there are different type of fractures. Okay, from okay to worst, this is the worst one. Okay, then yeah, all these fractures lah. Basically, it's a broken bone. Okay, so lastly, osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is when your bones don't get enough calcium and vitamin D. So as you can see here, okay, so this is your bone. Normally your bone is quite dense, right? There's a lot of cells in bone cells inside. But over time, right, the bone cells start to disappear and it becomes a lot of holes. Right? These are just holes. And so you get very fragile bones. If you fall, it's very easy for you to break your bones and get a fracture. So these two are quite linked, fracture and osteoporosis. Okay, I'm going to pause the video here and then I will upload it because I cannot upload too long video. It will overload the system. And then I will finish up on chapter 12 and the last part of this video. Okay, I'll see you just in a bit.